Ladies and gentlemen, a bit of an anticlimax now, 9 minutes on my part, of a discussion based on an original paper that I had and which I heard part of today. So let me begin by saying that I thoroughly agree with Professor Kouker's analysis and with his conclusions. I could stop here. Indeed, Thucydidis is a great historian, and surely, as Professor Kouker says, he's our contemporary. He's alive. For his narrative, Thucydidis' narrative rises above and beyond his times. Rightly, Professor Kouker compares Thucydidis in his paper with Karl von Clausewitz, 1780-1831, and credits the Athenian father of history with even greater relevance and durability to our own times than Clausewitz. Professor Kouker, by focusing on the deadly impact of the Athenian expedition in Sicily and on the outcome of the Peloponnesian War, he has raised for his audience, and myself included, some timeless questions. Was Napoleon's venture in the depths of Russia a key factor to his country's eventual defeat in Waterloo? Was Hitler's fate sealed in the frozen fields of Russia or on the scorching sands in North Africa? Was Vietnam, as we heard very nicely explained, in the case of the United States, and Afghanistan, in the case of the Soviet Union, the beginning of the end of the global reach? And to come closer to home, this home was Greece's Anatolian adventure in 1922, a lesson for those in smaller countries who break the unwritten rules set by the concert of great powers, in that case, the victors of World War I in 1922. Given my overall agreement with our distinguished speaker, let me offer some auxiliary thoughts for the remainder of my allotted time. I propose that Thucydidis' much-quoted tragic exchange between mighty Athens and the tiny island of Milos is probably one of the best renditions of the great debate between the proponents of realism and their counterparts of idealism. In fact, in the nuclear age of mutually assured destruction, MAD, a great war between nuclear powers, as was a global war between Athens and Sicily, such as between nuclear powers then, such as the US, Russia, and China, remains highly unlikely, given MAD, mutually assured destruction. Unfortunately, the million debate is likely to be repeated again and again. Allow me briefly to refresh your memories. In the 16th year of the Peloponnesian War, mighty Athens decided to incorporate into its sphere of influence the tiny island of Milos. Overwhelming Athenian naval forces surrounded Milos, and the Athenian emissaries made an offer, Marlon Brando style, to their Milian counterparts I'll make you an offer that you can't refuse type statement. In the Athenian view, the millions could not refuse. Their exchange was recorded in clinical fashion by Thucydidis, as translated by, in my case, by Richard Livingstone. Here is Thucydidis' account of what each side of emissaries said to the other, Athenians. We are seeking the safety of your state, for we wish you to become our subjects with least trouble to ourselves, and we would like you to survive in our own interests as well as your own. Millions respond. It may be your interest to be our masters. How can it be ours to be your slaves? Athenians, by submitting, you would avoid a terrible fate, and we should gain by not destroying you. Millions, surely it would be criminal cowardice in us who are still free not to take any and every measure before submitting to slavery. The Athenians, Thucydidis again. No, if you reflect calmly, for this is not a competition in heroism between equals, where your honor is at stake, but a question of self-preservation to save you from a struggle with a far stronger power. The choice between war and safety is given you. Do not obstinately take the worse alternative. The more successful people are those who stand up, and this is very important, who stand up to their equals, behave properly to their superiors, and treat their inferiors fairly. Think it over when we withdraw and reflect that your prosperity or ruin depends on one decision. The millions deliberated for some time afterward and decided to refuse the Athenian offer, in quotation marks. Athens, in response, blockaded the island for months and eventually moved in for the kill. Thucydidis clinically describes the finale as follows. In quotation again, reinforcements were sent from Athens and the siege was now pressed vigorously. There was some treachery in the town of millions, and the millions surrendered at discretion to the Athenians, who put to death all the grown men whom they took and sold the women and children for slaves. Subsequently, they sent 500 settlers and colonized the island. We can learn, and I'm almost closing here, some lessons from the study of this very sad episode regarding political arrangements, local and global, that rely on a balance of power to maintain a primitive world order. The fundamental problem in such circumstances is one of uncertainty, αβεβαιότητα. If the millions had known in advance that their choice was between certain capitulation and certain death, they might have capitulated and waited for a subsequent opportunity to rise up against Athens. Nor could they calculate the impact of putative assistance they might have secured, and they argued that earlier, from Sparta or other Greek city-states. And there was always that intangible element called hope. Hope. A small postscript of 3 lines. Incidentally, should we ask the father of history today, had he been alive, what he recommends that modern Greece should do while facing its dual economic and refugee crisis, he would probably answer, read my book and Professor Kouker's insightful critique. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.